Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Pressure. 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 I need this right now. Pressure. 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 Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Pressure. Pressure. Pressure.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Bread and Salt. If it's your first time here, thanks for coming. Bread and Salt is a community arts building. It used to be a Weber bakery, like a high production bakery. It's 45,000 square feet. We bought it 13 years ago out of bankruptcy. It had been abandoned for 5 years when we bought it, and we've sort of been building it one little piece at a time, taking our time. 13 years in, it's starting to take shape, I think, finally, but taking shape in a nice way. We're really proud of it. We have 5 galleries currently. We have an event space, which you're in. We have events of all types: experimental music, chamber music, parties, wine tastings, a lot of different things. We also are firm believers in craft, not just art. We have woodworking, glass blowing, ceramicists, an amazing group of characters hang out at Bread and Salt. We're really proud of everything that they do. This building was first built, the very corner, way down at the end, in 1897. So it slowly grew over all this time. So it's really neat what has happened here. Welcome. A little bit of housekeeping before we kick it off. There's some bathrooms through the courtyard on the left side, and then it's the second Saturday of the month. So every second Saturday we have an art crawl. So people are going to start coming at 5. So the din will rise a little bit. That's okay. We're kind of used to events that fall all over each other. We'll be okay. But just don't be surprised when people start to arrive. And please stay after the panel discussion and check out all the nooks and crannies of Bread and Salt. It's my pleasure to introduce. Well, first I want to talk a little about VIA International. VIA International is the fiscal sponsor of the House of Wise Words. They've been working in the community on both sides of the border in the San Diego Tijuana community for over 50 years. And they don't do gigantic, they do impactful projects, but it seems like it's almost like a drip at a time, a really meaningful, deep dive. They work into the projects. It's quite remarkable. They've been with us, over 10 years now, 11 years. Out of the 13 years, I think they were our first tenant or one of our first tenants. We have the pleasure of having Elisa Sabatini here, the director of VIA International. She's an amazing person, really generous soul, a beautiful heart, and we're doing something really significant on the far side of this meeting room. They're creating a bakery. And it's really poetic for us to have the bakery come back to Bread and Salt. Pani Paz is the name of the bakery, and it's really unusual because it's a nonprofit bakery. It'll teach people to bake and also how to be a business person, and they might just fan out and open their own business. And it's also collecting recipes from the neighborhood. It's a really, really beautiful thing that's happening. So coming soon, look for that. It's my pleasure to introduce Elisa Sabatini.
Thank you, Jim. I think that we want to kind of get into the meat of the presentation here today and hear from these esteemed panelists. So I have the distinct pleasure of introducing Rob Lane. Now, how did we come up with this elaborate project for this bilingual school in Tijuana? There was a group, the Loeb Fellows, who came in 2019. And they came to have an immersion here in the border region. But Rob Lane said, I want to do more. I want to Go visit. I want to see something in the community in Tijuana. And so our relationship with the school, which goes back 25 years, we reached out to them and said, can we have this small group come and visit the school? Well, Rob hasn't let it go since then. And since then, there's been a design group that came and has done the model for this school. And we have deepened the programming at the school for both the parents and the children, which you'll hear about. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Rob Lane.
So thank you. I'm really excited to be here. I'm also, just by way of the run of the show, I'm going to do a really brief introduction to the project. I've intentionally asked the panelists to not do PowerPoints. They were relieved. You are relieved. I'm giving only a short PowerPoint to kind of introduce things, and I'm going to ask a few questions myself, but then I'd like you all to actually get into the discussion. In terms of acknowledgements, I have to first thank the Loeb Fellowship. The Loeb Fellowship is a mid-career fellowship at Harvard where people who are doing good things in the world come and spend a year at Harvard and leave Harvard, hopefully, with the possibility of doing even better or doing whatever they did before even better. I want to thank EduPom. If I get into listing everyone, I will get in trouble. All of the acknowledgements are on the exhibition board. This exhibition will be up for 3 weeks. But I do need to acknowledge the Loeb Fellowship. I need to acknowledge VIA because obviously we're not from here, and any of you who do any kind of community-based planning know that that is a huge red flag. We have relied totally on VIA's long-term and trusted relationship with the school to make it work as well as it has and to accomplish as much as we have. There are 2 other people that I want to, let's see why, if it will, I'm trying to figure out why it won't. Oh, this dialogue box? Okay, thank you, Joe Erpilding. And of course, I also want to thank the World Design Capital for helping. I'm trying to figure out why, oh, there. So what I do need to do, however, is call out 2 people. On the right, in the middle, is David Castillo. He is an architect who is Yara's husband, and he has been providing pro bono services for us to go from these conceptual designs to the documents we actually had to submit to the education department to get this done, and he has been wonderful. And then next to Yara is the principal of the school, Adela Sanchez, who is absolutely the most amazing, like, little dynamo of a person and just constantly driving the projects. In fact, we sometimes have trouble keeping up with her, and we were about to suggest that something be built, and she said, well, I've already built that, so I hope you like it. So by way of just quick introduction, this is a regional map showing you where the House of Wise Words is roughly. And this aerial photograph of the Loma Bonita neighborhood, the red line is around the school campus, and there you see it in larger form there. It's kind of loosely organized around this big space in the middle, and the site is unbelievably beautiful. It's made up of these about 8 kind of single-story structures. The thing that's really interesting about it is that it's a bilingual school that teaches in Spanish and in Mixtec. The Mixtec are people that come from the southern part of Mexico, and their families have come north to find work, and many of them need to learn Spanish. To make it even more complicated, but I won't preview what we're going to get into in a discussion, many of them are American citizens who then have been deported back to Tijuana. So it's an extremely complicated process. It has a familiar, let's see if it, I'm wondering if it's just a delay in advancing. Here. It has a set of issues that are characteristics of the schools throughout TJ, which is why we chose it, because one of the fundamental ideas here is that in several ways that this school and what we're doing there would be a model for other schools in Tijuana. And we are still committed to that. Nyara is committed to that. Dilapidating buildings, open spaces, public open spaces that are in really bad shape, and landscape that is really degraded as a result of erosion and the lack of whatever finances or whatever would be needed to take care of it properly. Let's see. So as Alyssa was saying, this started out as what we called a Loeb Fellowship Day of Service. It was one of her, the kinds of projects that she organizes for us. A group of Loeb Fellows went down and spent a day just painting and cleaning up the place. And we really felt afterwards that what the school really needed was a comprehensive plan, because they were getting money to do things here and there, but whatever they could do, they were doing, and the sum was just never going to add up to the whole was never going to be as great as the sum of the parts if they didn't have a kind of comprehensive plan to tie all these initiatives together. So the alumni fellowship, we got a grant from the Loeb alumni to do an intensive working session at the school where we met with parents and teachers. We walked and toured. We actually came back. You can see this is the space. We came back and both with architects and landscape architects from TJ and Loeb Fellows and others, we kind of brainstormed out this rough comprehensive plan that we then turned into a real report, which we then, a year and a half ago, we presented to the school. Here's, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the school because you can figure it out from the boards, and I'm more interested actually in talking about the principles that we think are transferable on both sides of the border. But as you can see, it called for a kind of pulling the landscape together, introducing in particular, and maybe this is the thing to really emphasize, making it more of a community facility. The notion was that the school should be more than the school. It should actually cater to a whole bunch of needs in the neighborhood. And so among other things, there is a teaching kitchen, a community garden. The public spaces are to get shade and landscaping so that they can be used for different kinds of things. In particular, after the presentation, if you get up and walk around, what you can see is at the entry, and there's a model of it over here, there's this idea that that should become a true community, I'm going too fast here, that should become a true community space with a building that would be a library, or it could be a place for community education, and it would be designed in such a way that it could open out into this public space, and this public space would become sort of an important public space for the entire neighborhood. So that's in model form and on a board right over there. And this shows you an aerial photograph on the left of the existing condition and a physical model of the finished plan photo montaged into the aerial photograph. And again, all of that is on these boards, and we can look at that in more detail. As I said, we presented to the school a year and a half ago, and one of the students asked me the most terrifying question that you can possibly ask if you're someone like me, which is, when are we going to do all this? To which, you know, I was sort of hemmed and hawed, and I said, well, we're going to do the best we can. And actually, we have been making slow but real progress, which included both repairing a lot of the walls, the entry structure, which is, as you'll see over here in the model, part of the sort of, this was very important to Adela, the principal, to actually celebrate the entrance to the school, have a place in shade where parents and students could wait between sessions. And you can see over here, this photograph on the bottom right is a prototype of what is being built. That's not the school. But above, in that photograph, you can see the framing going up for the big shade structure in the space. So we're getting some things done, actually, little by little, and with very little financing. So I know it's the worst thing in the world is to kind of, I never tell my students that they should end a presentation with a text slide, but I'm going to do it anyway because I feel like this is really important because these are the principles that we feel are transferable from what we're doing here to other schools on both sides of the border. So in terms of process, this idea of doing sort of thoughtful landscape restoration that really accounts for sort of not just sustainable landscape practices, but opportunities for nutrition and eco-education. Civic spaces that can be used by the community, possibly even revenue-generating spaces. Creative strategies for both active and passive security. And this idea, which I was represented when we were at the school, and he said, absolutely not, never, it's against the law, but it's still up here, which is to have someone live on the grounds. We think ultimately the real security is to actually have somebody living on the grounds, and we're not quite letting go of that idea, even though that'll be hard. And to have a proactive and multifaceted process that creatively engages the communities and helps the schools think holistically about their sites. In terms of design principles, meaningful participation and feedback to design with the students and parents, not just for them. Phasing to find quick win early things to do, which is what we're doing, so people actually see that things are happening. Low cost, low tech, low maintenance. Try to be realistic about what we can do and how it can be worked out in the long term. Sustainable practices, about making the school a model of sustainability in terms of landscape, which means passive stormwater management, water harvesting, gray water mitigation, doing on-site food production, and in terms of buildings, trying to incorporate passive heating and cooling and solar energy. Entrepreneurship and revenue opportunities. Try to think about setting these spaces up in such a way that they can be used by the school to make money. People were even talking about the possibility of renting out to local football clubs the soccer stadium, the football rapido field. Community and culture, to try to figure out a way to make this a place where culture can be celebrated, the different cultures that are in these neighborhoods in the school, and experiential learning and play, which is very important because of the language difficulties, and also in this world of COVID, or post-COVID, new models for teaching outside and in the open air. So I'm going to introduce very briefly our three panelists. Oh, this is just a map that's also in the exhibit where the House of Wise Words is. These are all the schools that teach multinational students in Tijuana. Oh, and this is a great quote that actually Christina provided for me from a student. And basically, this is the challenge, that there are actually thousands of students that cross the border every day to be at the crack of dawn to try to get through customs in time to get to school. But the problem that this particular girl is talking about is the fact that she was deported and her Spanish is not that good, and because her teachers expect her to go back to the US, they don't really know what to do with her. They don't really, she feels like she's not really getting any of the attention that she really needs to advance in her studies, and it frightens her. We have three amazing panelists who are really the people who, I can't imagine a better panel for kind of talking about these issues. And I'm going to briefly read each of their bios so that they don't have to wax poetic about themselves. So Cristina Alfaro, PhD, Associate Vice President of International Affairs at San Diego State University, where she also serves as Provost Chair of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. She's the chair of the Reborder Conference that brings scholars and community members from both sides of the border to work on solutions to binational issues, and she leads the largest multilingual teacher education program in the state of California. Dr. Alfaro has 30 years of experience working in the field of social justice and educational leadership. She's executive director of the Center for Equity in Biliteracy and Binational Education Research, and served as director of the Formadores de Docentes Binacionales project funded by the California State Department of Education that builds on the assets of the students we share between Mexico and the US border. The recipient of numerous awards, Dr. Alfaro currently serves on several national and international boards where she is an advocate for what she calls transnationally mobile students. Adriana Martin del Campo is the executive director and founding member of EduPAM, Education para Mexico, where she leads the design and implementation of academic projects focused on integral education. With extensive experience across various educational sectors, Adriana previously directed the Thomas Jefferson Vale Real Institute in Guadalajara and founded 2 private international schools. She has also been involved in Mexico's public education sector as a literacy coach, contributing to a literacy project with Columbia University. Adriana holds a PhD in inclusive education, a master's in psychology, and degrees in social anthropology and elementary education. And Yara Amparo Lopez is master and specialist in international migration by the Colegio de la Frontera Norte, El Calif. She has a degree in primary education from the Border Normal campus, Tijuana, BC. Received her diploma from the University of California, San Diego, on U.S. political institutions and U.S.-Mexico relations program. She has served as academic consultant for the last 14 years in various educational levels. She has 20 years of experience as coordinator of programs related to migration and education. She has published articles at the University of Valencia, Spain, and the University of San Diego and University of Lincoln, Nebraska. She is the co-author of the book Migration, Education, and Society, Visions and Experiences from the Border. She's a member of the California Association for Bilingual Education. She is currently working for the Department of Education in Baja California as the director of the Binational Migrant Education Program. So we have 3 extraordinarily qualified people to talk about these issues. I'll tell you that I told them I was going to put them off balance after they gave their brief presentations by asking them to think about design, physical design, since this is after all the World Design Capital Program. So I'll go one more. You can turn the lights up, Jim. I think I will leave up on the screen this text slide. I'll go back to. I think I'll leave this slide just up, even with the lights on. And so with that, I'm sorry. And so with that, I'll also encourage our panelists to use their mic, but I'll ask each of you to give brief opening comments, and then maybe I'll ask a question or two, and then we'll take a question or two from the audience.
It's working. Good afternoon. Well, I'm not used to using a microphone. I just want to briefly tell you the work that we've been doing. Actually, Yara and I have been Good afternoon. My name is Cristina Alfaro, and I'm happy to be here to discuss the work that we're doing to better serve our binational student population. What I was saying earlier is that Yara and I have been working for many years on this issue because when I started working with this program with Yara, there were approximately 54,000 students. Right now, it's between 50,000 students that we share between the U.S. and Mexico border here in Baja California. We have some colleagues that have named this region what they call the La Santi region, and that is the region between LA, San Diego, and Tijuana, which is a mega region and where a lot of this back and forth actually happens. One of the key things that in my research we were able to really note is that the common denominator that we have between Mexico and the U.S. related to serving these students is that teachers on both sides of the border are unprepared. Unprepared to, number one, first acknowledge the assets that these students have and bring to the classroom. For example, these students have to navigate borders. They have to navigate languages. They have to navigate cultures. They have to navigate attitudes. So there's a lot of resilience that happens. And so the work that we're doing is to help teachers number one, recognize these talents, recognize these assets, and really shift from a deficit ideology to a very asset-based ideology when we're talking about this very particular group of students that in many cases are invisible. You know, that we here in the United States typically call students when they come into the classroom and they don't speak English, right away they're labeled as English learners, non-English speaking students. And we have like 30 labels for these students. But really, I call them linguistic geniuses. These are students that really come to school. You were talking about, some of them speak multiple languages when they come because they're speaking indigenous languages, Spanish, English, and many others. So when we started this work, we looked at it as how do we redesign teacher preparation, and in particular, bilingual teacher preparation. And so our project was called Formadores de Docentes. And so one of the key things that we looked at was, how do we begin to look at what are the critical dimensions that teachers on both sides of the border, because these students are going back and forth, and you saw the quote from the student where teachers don't know what to do. And teachers say, well, if you're gonna go back to Mexico, I'm not gonna waste my time with you, and vice versa, right? But the dimensions that we were able to call out in our research, and this was in collaboration with our colleagues from Baja California and San Diego State University and UCSD as well. So what we were looking at is how do we begin to look at the socio-political dimensions that these students have to go through, okay? So looking at what are the policies that are surrounding immigration on both sides of the border. Then the other aspect is the sociolinguistic aspect, that we are able to really honor and value the language or languages that students come to school with, instead of saying, leave your language outside the door because you're now in the United States and you have to speak English. So that's really shifting the ideology of what we talk about there. Additionally is looking at the culture, the socio-political aspects of the cultures, and also the socio-political aspects of languages. So, and the main thing that we also talk about is the social emotional aspects that these students have to go through. When they're crossing the border, a lot of times, these students have to just do a lot of navigating with no support. So the way that what we did with this project was develop a curriculum for teacher preparation that would recognize all this and that would be able to include this in part of their lesson plans. I'll stop there so that my colleagues can also have an opportunity to speak.
Well, nice to meet you, everyone. My name is Amparo Lopez Lopez, Yara Amparo Lopez Lopez, and I'm the coordinator for migrant education here in Baja California. And the principal thing we do is receive the students is coming from another countries and asking for education. So this is the easy part, yeah? We can have to the school, we call to the principal and send the family and the kids in the school. But what happened then? What working with that student, what working with the community. And then Cristina said we have 4 aspects with working together for the students. And the socio-emotional is, I think, is the most important part we need to work with the students. Because the language, right, it's a barrier for many students. But if the students don't feel good, don't feel okay, don't feel safe in the school, it's too hard to communicate with the teachers, with the community, with the parents, and et cetera, et cetera. So that is the important part for us, for working together with San Diego State University and with Formadores de Docentes and many other agencies like UNICEF, and ACNUR, we're working with the community for asking refugee in Baja California. And we're working with the national agencies, COMAR, for the refugee in Mexico. So we're working with that agency for working with the students in the schools and the parents and the community. So we have a lot of work to do, but this theme for the school is another issue, a big issue when the students is coming back or is coming for the first time from US to Mexico. It's not the impact socio-emotional. They have a physical impact. They have a huge difference for the organization for the school, for the time for the school, for the relationship with the teachers and the studies and the evaluations. So totally is different. We have two different countries and two different systems. So the students not just navigate for the border, navigate for the another system education. So when he go to the schools, I have many students asking to me, what happened with the grass? And if you live in Tijuana, you can see all the city is brown. We have a small place, greens. So every part is brown. So the kids is like where is the playground? Where is the lockers? Where is the cafeteria? Where is the gym? Where is the la 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 la? And I say the students, they don't happen anything if you playground in the land. It's normal. You can survive with that. You don't need the grass, okay? Because it's the form that you can say to the students is another reality for the students. And they not happen, they feel like I lost everything, but you need work with the students and say, you don't lose, you win. You have another culture, you have another experience, and you have another language. So that's the work we need to do together.
That's great.
So thank you for inviting me to be here. I'm Adriana Martín del Campo, and I work with EduPAM, Educación para México. And over the last 3 years, I've had the honor of connecting with Elisa and just bringing our heads together and working together in this project. And over coffee one day, Elisa said, we should make this a model. We should make sure that whatever happens here can be replicated and can help in other places. And our organization works in Jalisco. We work in Baja Norte. We work in Yucatan, in indigenous communities. And so listening to the amazing work that Cristina and Yara have done locally and also internationally, I think that we need to make sure to understand that there are huge challenges in Tijuana and San Diego. But we can learn so much from these challenges because they are so explicit. It's kind of this thing that borders have. They're explicit. And if you go towards the rest of Mexico, this is all still happening. It's just very diluted. So in Jalisco, for example, there is a bigger population of returned immigrants than Baja California Norte. But schools don't have all these systems and structures that people like Yara and Cristina have built here. So we have to make sure that we're learning from it and that we're also supporting this community in particular because it is more multinational, no? So I know, like speaking with Yara, we've worked with students from Congo and Haiti, and maybe we don't have as many international students in Jalisco. But we do have these students that come from the United States into Jalisco and then have to integrate, but that are also hoping to come back to California eventually. So I think that it's really important to learn and document and reflect on everything that's happening in this particular project. I'd like to talk a little bit about the concept of inclusion and how we tend to think of inclusion as something that only includes disability. But really the concept is about breaking barriers to learning and making sure these barriers can be cultural, they can be economic, they can be because of a disability. In this case, what we've learned in working with the Betún Xavi School is we went in and we did a reading and writing assessment and tried to find how many students above the age of 10 could not read and write. And then we also went in and did sociograms. So figuring out how students were relating with each other and if they were making friends. And there was a huge correlation between not knowing how to read and write and not being able to make friends. So speaking to what Yara was saying, there's a huge component of just the socio-emotional aspect of supporting these students to not only bring up their academics, but to also integrate and to make sure that they can make friends. And we do understand that because the communities that we work in, Mexico in general, have a lot of mobility, we know that with mobility comes vulnerability, not only for these students, but for their families. The idea that they have had to reroute. And so you have these students who are trying to integrate, but also their families are trying to integrate. And schools become so important because they have to become from standalone schools to community learning centers, to places where everyone, mom and dad and grandma can actually connect with other community members. So I think this project offers that, and I'm really happy that the Secretary of Education in Mexico is open to it, because generally schools are one model of school, and that's what public education kind of looks like everywhere. But the idea that CEP is open to experimenting with VIA International, with EduPAM, with all these projects, I think is a huge, huge step towards building something new. So yeah.
Thank you for preventing every moderator's nightmare, which is trying to figure out a way to tell the panelists that their time is up and they should move on. So this is great. What you put down in those few minutes was amazing and really helpful. I'm going to ask the first question by a question that we all spoke about, which is for the three of you. Yara, I think, already started to get into it. What role do you think the kind of physical plant of a school, in what ways can the physical plant of a school and its design mitigate some of the challenges that you have been talking about?
Well, I think the big challenge is can understand the difference for the government in Mexico for structure for the school and building the school, and the idea in US what is the born for one school. So I think when we working together in binational projects, we need to understand that huge difference, because when I say why do it like that, it's because I have the idea what happened in one school in US. And I think it's the different, but it's wrong. But in my reality, that's the process. That's the things they can do. So that's the big challenge for design and where this aspect binational for construction of be better school, better space.
Do you want to speak? Because I know you had a kind of personal story that you actually mentioned when we were on Zooming about your own experience.
Oh, when I was speaking, yeah. So I'm binational. No, I'm both Mexican and a U.S. citizen, and I went to an international school, and I was commenting that even within that context, we had from a very early age this kind of perception that the Mexican classes were what we called chafa, which is like the material just wasn't great, the classroom wasn't great, but then our English classes had these like beautiful borders and materials. So just making sure, and I was speaking with Robert about like building a place where really great learning can happen, that you're not necessarily just taking a US school and replicating, but actually building a beautiful Mexican school where things that are relevant to the culture can happen, and where cultural self-esteem can grow. Like where they can just feel really happy about their Mexican school and understand that it's different. No, I think that's one of the biggest challenges. And then the other one is just very, like, logistically, schools have to be flexible. No, spaces have to be flexible, and where all different sorts of learning can happen. And that's always a challenge when building a school.
Right. In some ways, I think what you just said reinforces what Yara was saying, maybe in a somewhat different way of like, we're not trying to transplant an American school here. Let's figure out what a really great Mexican elementary school, Tijuana elementary school looks like, and not try to imitate something that's foreign. Christine, do you have a thought about this, about the role of physical design in this? Okay, I wanted to actually, because I know Joe Erpelding, who is helping lead this program, he's from the World Design Capital, who's helping to lead this program for the World Design Capital, as an educator himself and was involved in building a school. And he has to go to something else, so I wanted to just give him an opportunity to say, offer a few reflections, and if he has a question.
Again, thank you so much, Joe Erpelding. So I work in San Diego with my compadre here, Hofras, so big round of applause to Hofras, but thank you. So we opened up a Design 39 campus, so it's a K-8. And really what was inspirational when you shared is that this idea of designing with versus designing for. And I think that's so critical, is that we don't know. We have to walk a mile in the shoes, but actually be in the shoes together. And then when you look at the open spaces you were mentioning, so just like into the design, imagine all the different things that can happen here, just like here in the back room. They're talking about how that can now become a co-op, a place for building, for the community to come in and to learn how to do community-based learning. And then the environment, like leveraging the environment as the instructional classroom. So looking at different spaces that you have that can become classrooms, indoor, outdoors. And so I think that flexibility that you mentioned is so critical. But I just would say that it's how do we get the voices in the room, so who's at the table, and more importantly, who's not at the table. And I think that's what I think is so critical, and that oftentimes our students are left out of that decision making. So I would say it's so critical to have a learner voice, and that's what's important with our work with World Design Capital, is its youth voice. So how do we leverage youth voice in the work? Thank you.
Thank you, Joe, that's great. I'm curious if you all have any questions either for each other, or if there's someone else in the audience who would like to offer Alyssa, you've had plenty of experience of this, so I think it'd be great for you to offer some. Why don't you come up and stand here so that
Sure.
it can be recorded, because I mean, you've been at this and you have your own interesting thoughts about that.
Yeah, I think the thing that sometimes we don't get to, so this is what I wanted to put on the table today, is that one of the issues with many of the schools in Tijuana is the lack of funding generally. And we know that the Secretary of Education has a big challenge to make basic educational processes available to the many thousands of children throughout the city. And so, you know, what is our idea, or what could be our idea, to make this project a reality? And so I'm going to leave it to maybe Adriana to speak to this, but we've developed a long list of maquiladora factories that we are in the process of approaching to see about partnerships. And so I think we have another component here that we haven't really tapped, which is the corporate systems that really we think will be needed to support these kinds of activities. But I know there's probably more to be said about it, so it's less of a question and just say we need corporate support.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Elisa. So yes, in general, schools in Mexico are operating on about, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's between 18 and 20 times less of what the budget is in the United States. So really what it comes down to is that to make great learning happen in our schools, we need to co-construct. We need to make sure that this is, the Ministry of Education, that we have nonprofits, that we have all sorts of organizations, universities that are helping bring the theory down to the actual action within the schools and building learning development for teachers. So it really has to be an all hands on if we want to get schools to an optimum level. And that said, Elisa, yes, thank you. We need all the hand support connections we can get to make this happen, because we really do believe that once this is the facilities, no? But we also have on-site psychologists and literacy specialists and nutricologia projects, and working with, via International, working with the women and giving microcredits and the gardening. I mean, all of these things are happening in this one space. So we need support, and we want to show the impact of this one space, and then make sure that we can replicate it.
Right. Christina, you looked like you were about to. Yes.
Yes.
Please.
One of the most important things is, of course, the collaboration, the binational collaboration between Mexico and the United States. But going back to the classroom, going back to the actual education of the students, what's really important is for teachers, educators at all levels on both sides of the border to understand the educational systems on both sides of the border. When we first got together with our project for Formadores de Docentes, I knew a lot, but not enough. And I realized that I had so many gaps in my understanding, not only for K-12 education, but also at the university level. And we had really good conversations. So we said, look at how much we've learned just discussing this. So we have now brought it to bilingual, binational teacher preparation here at San Diego State University, and it's spreading to other universities, because we developed a curriculum that is being used at the California Department of Education through this project. That was our signature assignment. But I believe that, just a couple of weeks ago, Yara and I were giving a presentation for some of our leaders in education, and from San Isidro. And we were Yara and her team came, and they just kind of shared exactly what's going on in education in Mexico. And these teachers said, we've worked on the border for years, and they were not aware. They were just like, whoa. So we have a lot of work to do. And I think that in order to do that, we really need to change policies. We need to change curriculum. We need to change ideologies and really begin to work together. So I think that this collaboration that is happening right now in building this particular school or expanding this school is going to be really amazing for us, because it'll be a model that we can use, because we bring teachers from other places. In fact, in a few months, we are going to be receiving teachers from Michigan, that they have a lot of students over there that they say like, whoa, we don't know what to do, what's going on. It's kind of like an area study. So they will be coming to visit Tijuana, and Yara's going to arrange the visits to school so that they can understand, where do these children come from? Just like what Yara was saying about when students from here go over there and they go like, where's the cafeteria? Where's the soccer field? And students that go over there, they're like deer in headlights. They really have no idea what to do, and teachers don't know what to do. So we are also not just working here on the border, but we're moving into other areas where we have a lot of migration, because in the United States, I shared the numbers for here in California, but throughout the United States, throughout the nation, we have over 700,000 students that are, the research has labeled transnationally mobile students, but we call them the students that we share, and because con cariño, they're ours. They belong to both of us. They belong to both Mexico and the United States, and it's an investment. It's something that we have to look at as it's an asset, it's an investment, it's a binational investment if we do this right.
That's a great thought. I wonder if each of you, and then I also I was going to ask Joe Frost, who's here from Tijuana side, but I was going to ask if Adriana or Yara or Christina, do you have a example, let's say, of a success story that is in this world of a kind of a school, something that was done in terms of design of a school that you thought was successful and that you know we could learn from in terms of what we're doing? Or you would consider, you know, Rob, you should go look at what they're doing here.
Yeah.
Okay, go.
Well, depend how you define success, right?
Okay.
Because we have one school in Tecate, and working together with San Diego State University and EduPAM, and CABE, and working with another organization here to developing the first public school in Mexico. They have a bilingual program, and not bilingual like a private school, bilingual like a bilingual school in United States, with methodology, with theory, with preparation for the teachers.
A new school that would be here in the United States side, or
In Tecate, in Mexico, in Baja California.
okay.
Yeah.
But how is that? This is very interesting. But how is that different than these other bilingual schools that are, like in the case of the House of Wise Words, Mixtec and Spanish? So clarify for me what you.
It's so different because the binational bilingual school and indigenous school is they have just the, how you say materia, how you say curriculum for teaching one day, 1 hour Mixteco. And all the curricula is in Spanish. So that's not a bilingual school. Yeah?
I see.
You teach in Mixteco. You teach in 5 hours per week. And you may be talking with the students in all day for school, but you don't teach in bilingual education. Okay? You don't have the methodology for teaching a bilingual school. So that school in Tecate, we start working with the university and with that organization for developing professional development teacher, learning how teaching two language.
Interesting. Is this going to be a new building, or is it an existing building where you're going?
It's an existing building, but the reason that this project was so important and why it is a model is because when it's to prepare these students that are constantly back and forth. So they go to Mexico and then they say, you're Mexican, but you don't speak English. I mean, you don't speak Spanish. It's like, what is the problem? And then they come over here and then it's like, you speak Spanish, you're supposed to be speaking English. So the answer is bilingual education. The answer is, that way students do not lose so much. So this school that Yara is explaining is with the bilingual methodology where students come in and they're learning both languages and they're learning the content in whatever grade level it is. So that way when students go back and forth, they're not losing content and they're they're becoming bilingual.
Interesting.
And the second part for that school, when we need stop the program by the government change in Mexico. So it's like, okay, I lose again. I have the first school and I lose again the project. So then EduPAM is coming. So I talk with Adriana and I say, I have that school and we can do the model EduPAM, and we start or we continue working with the students. So EduPAM, go to the school, and please, EduPAM, say.
So it was really interesting because Yara and I were speaking and just, getting to know each other, and we wanted to start working in the region, and she said, I'm super frustrated because we've put so much into this program happening, and there's a change in government, and
Right.
all the teacher training, all the investment, everything's gone. And so we talked about finding what practices really work that she's found that she's been able to implement with other collaborations, and then having us to support so that there can be some continuity in those projects. And that's kind of how we've been working. And I think that when all of these programs become so vulnerable with government changes, there has to be some sort of structure to come in and support and give continuity. And that's what we've tried to do.
Joe Frost, could you introduce yourself? And maybe you have that, because I know you're very involved in this on TJ's side.
Yes, definitely. And I'll step over here as my mate Joe did. I am a designer and I'm also a social scientist, and I've been teaching students research that are in doctorate in education. So some of these realities that you are talking about, I've seen them in the works of my students. I really like considering design when I see this project is that I recognize this type of school. And something Robert said yesterday, where I met him physically, we met before through the internet, is that he really liked the Central Plaza and how the place opens, the school opens in space. And I like that I recognize this design to other schools all across Mexico, right? And then when this design is coming, it's adding a new layer, right? And I also like to think that it's adding a new layer that is, in a way, site-specific to this border. I mean, there are different borders across the world, but the way we are interacting here, it's particular, right? We are closer here to a bilingual model than in Arizona, right, for political reasons. Yeah, well, I have a friend who had to shift her career because she was trained to be a bilingual teacher, and then there's no opportunities left in Arizona. So I really like what you said about building a curriculum to acknowledge these different students, the transborder, but also the incoming migrant from different parts of the world now. I guess also we need to recognize the parents, right? And we have lots of issues or challenges, better yet, because I see schools are both in the US and in Mexico regarding to managerial issues and standards of evaluation, and it's kind of like a keeping the machine, but not recognizing that we are working with people. Of course, what you said today, it does recognize students at the center of our endeavors. So going back to design, which I think it's important then to think that organizational aspects of schools is another part of design. And we should really think how we can connect these different systems that are in different states and in different countries in terms of a continuity, right? So all these efforts, how are they continue? What is going to be the assemblages, right? The quilting, the social quilting that can keep these projects being multiplied, since we're talking about a model, right? So finding a model, how can be multiplied? And if placing a question here would be, how could we integrate this social and physical landscape, right, of our region into these designs? And it comes to my mind the idea of grass. Well, yeah, maybe grass is not suitable here, but what plants are suitable, right? Or what activities, right, are the ones that we could have? So congratulations to all of you. This is great work. We're very excited from the World Design Capital Youth and Education Network.
Thank you. So we're about done. I think we're about out of time. We're almost at an hour. So I want to give each of the panelists a chance to offer a closing thought, and then we'll wrap it up. Those of you who have been on panels before, and I've been, I get my final thought together sometime before the panel starts, because I know inevitably the moderator's going to turn to me and say, okay, any final thoughts? So.
I just want to share how excited I am of just the collaborations that can happen and invite everyone to connect with what we're doing and also help us connect with whatever else is happening with regards to building this relationship between education in both countries. And thank you for organizing this, and thank Elisa.
Well, just want to say thanks, but I think the most important, we can share, we can collaborate. We can do a lot of things together, and, well, do it.
Yes. What I really love about this work and the collaboration, because we all know in order to do good work, there's got to be collaboration, and there's teams, like Yara was saying about that they got the schoolhouse. She brought everybody from California. By the way, everybody knows Yara all over the nation and in California, because she's constantly advocating. But I think that what really excites me about this work and keeps me going is just rehumanizing education, rehumanizing global migration. So I think that the work that we're doing together is really kind of moving the needle in that direction. So I thank everyone for this great work, and thank you.
So I guess the collaboration is the closing theme. And I want to thank everyone. I want to thank Jim for helping set this up, and Elisa, and Xavier, who is recording all this for us. And I want to thank the three panelists, two of the three of whom had to really travel to get here and give us their precious time, and I really appreciate it. So thanks to all of you.